Tom Harper is a struggling taxi driver with a single goal: to provide a better life for his daughter, Sarah. But one fateful night, he crosses paths with Elena Morrison, a young mother in distress, holding her daughter, Lily, and fighting back tears. Moved by compassion, Tom offers them a ride, refusing payment without knowing that this small act of kindness would forever alter his life. When Elena's wealthy and powerful family learns of Tom's selflessness, they offer him a new job and the financial support he desperately needs. Yet, as Tom settles into this unexpected opportunity, he and Elena uncover a hidden connection that ties them together in ways neither could have imagined. As they explore this bond, they discover how the smallest acts of kindness ripple through time, leading to redemption, second chances, and an ending that will leave readers breathless. Wheels of Fortune is an emotional journey of resilience, compassion, and the life-altering power of empathy. Tom sat in his worn taxi, the hum of the engine barely breaking the silence of the empty streets. The evening had been slow, and he was about ready to call it a night. Thoughts of overdue bills and Sarah's school expenses weighed on his mind. Just then, he spotted a woman on the sidewalk, holding a young child close to her chest. She looked distressed, glancing around anxiously. Against his better judgment, Tom pulled over. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, rolling down his window. The woman looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I need a ride, please," she said softly. Tom gestured for her to get in. As she settled in, her daughter clutching her hand tightly, he noticed the weariness in her face. "Rough night?" he asked, trying to break the tension. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "More than you know." He wanted to ask more, but since she wasn't ready to talk, instead, he focused on the road, wondering what could have brought her to this moment. As they neared her destination, Tom could feel the weight of her silence. He finally broke it. "Don't worry about the fare," he said as he pulled up outside a modest apartment complex. The woman looked at him, surprised. "But I have some cash. I don't want to take advantage." Tom shook his head. "You looked like you needed a hand. We all have tough times, right?" Her eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." "Take care of yourself," he replied with a gentle smile. Watching her and her daughter walk into the building, he felt a strange sense of fulfillment, as if this small act was the least he could do. He drove off, though her image lingered in his mind. Later that night, Tom had just settled into bed when his phone buzzed, its sharp ring piercing the quiet. He groggily picked it up, surprised to see an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Tom Harper, the taxi driver?" a calm, unfamiliar voice asked. "Yeah, that's me," Tom replied, a mix of confusion and curiosity. "I'm calling on behalf of a woman you helped earlier. She told us about your kindness," the man continued. "She didn't want to reveal much, but your gesture meant a lot to her." Tom was puzzled. "I didn't do much, really. Just gave her a lift." "That's precisely why it matters," the voice said. "We'd like to meet you to discuss this further." Tom hesitated, unsure if he should agree, but something compelled him to say, "All right, where and when?" The next morning, Tom found himself standing before a grand mansion, feeling out of place. He rang the doorbell, and a well-dressed older man answered, introducing himself as John Carlyle. "Please come in, Tom," John said warmly. As they walked into a lavish sitting room, John gestured for him to sit. "We wanted to thank you properly. Elena, the woman you helped, is very dear to this family. She's been through a lot." Tom listened, surprised as John continued. "Your kindness meant more to her than you realize. We'd like to offer you a position at one of our businesses as a gesture of gratitude. A stable job, benefits, something that could help you and your family." Tom blinked, taken aback. I don't know what to say." "Just consider it, Tom. Sometimes a small act of kindness deserves a ripple of its own." As Tom left the mansion, he felt as if he were walking in a dream. The idea of a stable job with real benefits was almost too much to believe. He thought of Sarah and the weight that could finally be lifted off their lives. The memory of Elena's tired eyes haunted him. He understood struggle deeply and knew that everyone carried unseen burdens. Maybe this unexpected opportunity was something he had earned, even unknowingly. Stepping into his taxi, Tom took a deep breath. "All right," he muttered, gripping the steering wheel. "Let's see where this takes us." Tom walked into the Carlyle family's office building, his nerves getting the best of him. As he took in the polished floors and bustling staff, he felt completely out of place. A young receptionist greeted him with a smile. "You must be Tom Harper. Welcome." "Yes, that's me," he replied, clearing his throat. "I'm, new here." John Carlyle approached, extending a hand. "Glad you could join us, Tom. Let me show you around." As they walked through the office, John explained the business's goals. "We focus on helping the community, Tom. You're here because you share that value." Tom nodded, humbled. He'd only ever thought of himself as a taxi driver. Hearing John speak of his kindness with such respect was almost surreal. As Tom settled at his new desk, he heard a familiar voice. "Tom, what are you doing here?" He turned to see Elena standing in the doorway, surprise in her eyes. "Elena, I didn't expect to see you here." She smiled, a bit awkwardly. "John told me they offered you a position. I didn't realize you'd accept." Tom chuckled. "Neither did I. I've never had a job like this before." Elena's gaze softened. "I'm glad you did. You deserve this, Tom. The kindness you showed me, I haven't forgotten it." He felt a warmth in her words, an unspoken connection. "Well, maybe we're both here for a fresh start," he said gently. Over the next few days, Tom found himself adjusting to the rhythm of office life. The paperwork, the structured hours, all foreign, but he started finding purpose in the work. One afternoon, John stopped by his desk. "Tom, I've noticed your dedication. It's refreshing." Tom nodded, appreciative. "I'm just trying to keep up. This is all new to me, but I'm grateful for the opportunity." John chuckled. "Your humility is one of your best qualities, Tom. Keep that with you." Tom felt a surge of confidence, his insecurities easing. Maybe he could make a difference here, he thought. That evening, Tom shared his experiences with Sarah over dinner. "It's strange, working in an office," he admitted. "I keep expecting someone to tell me I don't belong." Sarah smiled. "Dad, you do belong. You're always helping people. This job just lets you do it in a different way." Tom felt a swell of pride, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm doing this for us. For your future." Sarah's eyes sparkled with hope. "And you'll be amazing at it. I just know it." As the days passed, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Elena's story. During a quiet moment at lunch, he turned to a colleague and asked, "Do you know much about Elena?" The colleague raised an eyebrow. "She's been through a lot, but she's resilient. John helped her when she needed it most." Tom nodded, his curiosity growing. He sensed a deeper connection between them, a mystery that he felt drawn to unravel. As he returned to his desk, he knew that he was about to embark on a path filled with unknowns, and he was ready for whatever came next. Tom was settling into his new role when he overheard two colleagues discussing Elena. "She's been through a lot," one whispered. "I heard her family had a falling out years ago." Tom listened, curiosity piqued. He approached them, trying to be casual. "Do you know much about Elena?" They exchanged glances. "Just that she's had a rough time. Her family is wealthy, but let's just say money doesn't fix everything." Tom nodded, processing this. Elena's hardship wasn't just financial. There was a deeper story, one that made him feel a strange sense of connection. As he returned to his desk, he realized he needed to know more. Later that week, John approached Tom. "We're having a family dinner tomorrow evening. Elena will be there, and it might be a good opportunity for you to understand more about us." Tom hesitated. "Are you sure? I wouldn't want to intrude." "Nonsense," John assured him. "You're part of the family now, in a way. You've done more for us than you realize." Tom accepted the invitation, curious about what secrets the evening might reveal. This dinner felt like more than just a meal. It was an introduction to a world he'd only glimpsed before. At the dinner, Tom found himself seated next to Elena. The conversation flowed easily, but he sensed a lingering sadness in her gaze. He finally leaned over and asked softly, "Elena, why did you leave your family?" She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "I lost someone close to me, my brother. It tore us apart." Tom nodded, understanding her pain. I know what it's like to lose someone. It changes everything. Elena met his gaze, her eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. Thank you, Tom. I don't share this often, but you've been a comfort. Their shared experience of loss felt like a bond, one that needed no further explanation. As the night wore on, John took Tom aside. I've been meaning to tell you more about the Carlyles. My family has always believed in giving back, helping others who, like you, value compassion. Tom was taken aback. I never thought of myself as anything special. I just try to do the right thing. John smiled. And that's precisely why we value you, Tom. Kindness, after all, is rare and precious. Tom felt humbled and inspired, sensing he'd found a purpose here beyond financial security. He wanted to live up to the faith they'd placed in him. As they walked out together, Elena approached Tom, her face thoughtful. Thank you for coming tonight. It means a lot, even if I didn't expect you to see this side of us. Tom smiled gently. I'm glad I could be here, and I think there's more to this connection than we realize. Elena nodded, her expression softening. Maybe you're right, Tom. Maybe. There's a reason we crossed paths. As they parted, Tom felt something shift, as if their lives were entwining in ways neither of them could predict. He left with a sense of anticipation for what was yet to unfold. Tom sat in John's office, working through some documents, when John entered, looking thoughtful. Tom, I feel you should know a bit more about Elena's past, he began. Tom looked up, intrigued. I've sensed there's more to her story. John nodded. Elena's brother passed away unexpectedly a few years ago. His death created a rift in the family. She felt she had to leave to find herself. Tom's heart tightened. He understood that kind of pain. Thank you for sharing this with me, John. John gave a small smile. You're part of this family now, Tom. I thought it was only fair. That afternoon, Tom passed by an open office door and heard a voice he recognized, Elena. She was speaking with someone on the phone, her tone raw and vulnerable. I lost everything when I left, she whispered. Sometimes, I wonder if I made the right choice. Tom paused, feeling an urge to step in but deciding against it. Hearing her pain gave him a new perspective on her journey. He understood now that she, too, was trying to rebuild her life from the ground up. Later, when she saw him, she offered a sad smile, as if she knew he'd heard. We're all just trying to find our way, aren't we, Tom? He nodded, feeling an even deeper bond between them. Over coffee one evening, Tom decided to share his own story. You know, I lost my wife years ago. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Elena looked at him, her eyes soft with empathy. I'm sorry, Tom. Losing someone that close. It changes everything. He nodded. Yes, it does. I had to keep going for Sarah, though. She's all I have. Elena placed her hand gently on his. You're stronger than you realize, Tom. And Sarah is lucky to have you. Their shared experiences of loss forged a connection that felt unbreakable, built on mutual understanding and respect. As Tom settled further into his role, he began to face new challenges. One day, a client meeting didn't go as planned, leaving him frustrated. He returned to his desk, feeling the pressure build. Elena approached him, sensing his stress. Rough day? She asked with a gentle smile. Tom sighed. Yeah, I'm just not used to all of this. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm in over my head. She shook her head. Tom, you've handled tougher things. Trust me, you belong here. Her encouragement gave him a renewed sense of purpose. He decided he wouldn't let a setback deter him. He'd prove to himself, and to her, that he could succeed. That evening, Tom returned home to find Sarah waiting with a worried expression. Dad, I've been thinking, why are these people helping us so much? Tom sat beside her. They're good people, Sarah. Sometimes kindness has a way of finding us when we need it most. Sarah nodded, though her brow remained furrowed. I just hope it's as simple as that. Tom smiled, reassuring her. Trust me, kiddo. Good things can happen, even to us. As he said it, he realized he was finally beginning to believe it himself. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time, he felt ready for whatever came next. Tom was flipping through old photos at home when he came across a familiar face from years ago. It was an image of a woman who had once helped him during a rough time in his life, her kindness staying with him ever since. He was stunned. The woman bore a striking resemblance to Elena's mother, whom he'd seen in the portraits at the Carlisle mansion. The realization struck him like a wave. Could it be? He whispered. Overwhelmed by this newfound connection, he knew he had to talk to Elena. It felt as if fate had been working to bring them together all along. The next day, Tom found Elena in the break room, and he pulled her aside. "Elena, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice shaky. She looked at him, concerned. "What is it, Tom?" He took a deep breath. "Years ago, your mother helped me when I was at my lowest. She didn't know me, but her kindness got me through. I only just realized the connection." Elena's eyes widened, tears filling them. "I had no idea. She would always say that kindness had a ripple effect." Tom nodded, emotions rising. "Maybe we're here because of that ripple, Elena." Later that day, Tom decided to confide in John, sharing the story of how Elena's mother had unknowingly helped him. John listened, his expression softening with understanding. "You're right, Tom," John said. "It's remarkable how one act can bridge lifetimes. I think Elena's mother would be proud to know her kindness found its way back to her family." Tom felt a sense of closure, knowing that he had finally come full circle. He also felt more committed than ever to his work and the connections he was building. "Thank you, John," Tom replied. "For everything." John patted his shoulder. "You're part of this family, Tom. You've earned it." Inspired by Tom's openness and her mother's legacy, Elena began to consider reconnecting with her estranged family. One evening, she approached Tom with a look of resolve. "Tom, I've decided to reach out to my family again," she said, a mix of fear and hope in her voice. Tom smiled encouragingly. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Elena. You deserve peace." She nodded, her gaze softening. "Thank you. I wouldn't have found this strength without you. Just remember, you're not alone," he replied. Elena felt her heart swell with gratitude. She had lost her way once, but with Tom's support, she was finding it again. Tom returned home that night, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from him. As he looked around the small apartment, he realized how far he'd come. The connection he'd shared with Elena's family had changed everything, not just for him, but for Sarah too. Sarah noticed his thoughtful expression and asked, "What's on your mind, Dad?" Tom smiled, just thinking about how sometimes things come full circle in ways we can't explain. "I think we're going to be okay, Sarah." She hugged him, her eyes bright with hope. "I know we will, Dad." For the first time in years, Tom felt a true sense of peace. The past had led him here, to a new family, new friends, and a future filled with promise. Tom sat in the auditorium, watching as Sarah crossed the stage in her graduation cap and gown. Pride welled up in him, and he clapped as her name was announced. After the ceremony, Sarah found him in the crowd, grinning. "Dad, I did it!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. He chuckled, hugging her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah. You've worked hard for this moment." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "Thank you for everything, Dad. We wouldn't be here without you." Tom felt a lump in his throat. "And I wouldn't be here without you. We make a good team, don't we?" They both laughed, feeling the weight of their journey finally lifting. Later, Tom noticed John and Elena approaching. John shook Tom's hand firmly. "Congratulations, Tom. Sarah's future is looking bright." Tom smiled. "Thank you, John. I owe a lot to you and your family." Elena stepped forward, hugging Sarah. "Your father's kindness set so much in motion. We're grateful to have you both in our lives." Sarah blushed, nodding shyly. Tom turned to Elena, gratitude filling his gaze. "I don't think I'll ever be able to thank you enough for this." Elena smiled warmly. "Sometimes, people cross paths for reasons we don't understand until later. This was one of those times." A few weeks later, Tom and Elena met for coffee. She looked peaceful, a change he hadn't seen in her before. "I reconnected with my family," she admitted, smiling. Tom's face lit up. "That's wonderful, Elena. How did it go?" "It was emotional, but healing," she replied. "I think my mother's legacy of kindness has brought us all closer together." And thanks to you, I felt strong enough to do it. Tom reached across the table, placing a hand on hers. I'm glad. You deserve peace, Elena. She squeezed his hand, eyes full of gratitude. So do you, Tom. One evening, John invited Tom for dinner at the mansion. As they sat in the grand dining room, John looked at Tom thoughtfully. Tom, your dedication and values have impressed us. We'd like to offer you a more senior role within the family's business. Tom's eyes widened. John, I don't know what to say. Just say yes, John chuckled. You've earned it, Tom. We trust you. Overwhelmed, Tom nodded. I'd be honored. Thank you, John. This means the world to me. As he left that night, Tom realized his life had truly transformed. The challenges he'd once faced now felt like distant memories. Later that evening, Tom sat on the balcony of his modest apartment, reflecting on how far he and Sarah had come. She joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. Dad, she whispered, do you think things happen for a reason? He smiled, wrapping an arm around her. I think they do, Sarah. Sometimes, a small act of kindness can change everything. As they watched the city lights, Tom felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that the path he had taken, with all its struggles, had led him here. His journey had come full circle, a testament to the power of compassion and the life-altering potential of kindness.